Hi, my name is Christine Van Aken. I'm with the San Francisco League of Women Voters, and I'm here today to discuss Proposition A, a ballot measure that San Francisco citizens will be voting on November 2nd.
Proposition A is a measure that would authorize the City of San Francisco to issue general obligation bonds in the amount of $46.15 million. The bonds would be used to finance earthquake retrofitting on affordable housing and single-room occupancy buildings that are currently deemed to be at risk during an earthquake. Proposition A would allow an increase in property taxes to pay for the bonds.
I have here with me Howard Epstein, the chairman of the San Francisco Republican Party and an opponent of Proposition A. Howard, why do you oppose this measure?
We oppose this for a few reasons. First of all, generally speaking, bonds are used for government-owned buildings. Part of these buildings are government-owned, but part of them are privately owned, income-producing buildings. We don't think that the taxpayers should have to pay to retrofit privately owned income-producing buildings. Remember, the landlords own these, and they do not have to pay these bonds back unless the buildings are taken off the affordable housing rolls. So as long as it's affordable housing, we're actually giving gift of public funds to the select 31 building owners. San Francisco has roughly $6.5 billion annual budget, yet the infrastructure is always let go to the last thing. They wait till it crumbles rather than fixing it out of everyday funds while overfunding some other things. We don't think that San Francisco tenants who will be charged to pay for these bonds through pass-throughs or other property owners, homeowners, and everybody else in this city should have to pay to retrofit privately owned buildings.
And Howard, what are the costs and or benefits to San Francisco citizens if this measure were to pass?
Well, the cost is usually about double for the bonds. So if it's a $46 million bond, figure it's going to be close to $100 million by the time they're done paying interest and everything else on it. Of course, benefits are the buildings are retrofitted, but they should be retrofitted by income that the city has. For $6.5 billion for roughly 800,000 to 835,000 people, depending on whose figures you believe, is very high for any city, even when you include that this is a city and a county rolled into one.
Okay, thank you, Howard. I'm now with Sarah Karlinski, Deputy Director of SPUR, the San Francisco Planning and Urban Research Association, and a proponent of Proposition A. Sarah, why do you support this measure?
Thank you for asking, and thank you for having me. The reason that I support the measure, there are a variety of different reasons. The first one is that it's very difficult to think about earthquakes or even to talk about them. In fact, often when we think about earthquakes, we just want to put our head in the sand and just pretend that they're not coming. But unfortunately, we know that they are coming. And in fact, the U.S. Geological Survey estimates that there's a 63% chance that we're going to have a major event here in the Bay Area in the next 30 years. So what we need to do right now is to get prepared, and part of that is thinking about resilience and the resiliency of our city, the ability of our city to rebound quickly after an earthquake. In order to do that, we need to shore up both our buildings and our lifelines. We just saw what happened in San Bruno. That was very scary. That was a lifeline break. We can have buildings break here in San Francisco. And that's why the Department of Building Inspection has been working on a program called CAPS, the Community Action Plan for Seismic Safety. They've done a report called Here Today, Here Tomorrow, and it's all about soft story buildings. And soft story buildings, contrary to the name, they're not cuddly, they're not nice. What they are buildings that have a seismic vulnerability right on that ground floor because of many window openings or garage door openings. And those are the buildings during Loma Prieta, a lot of which tilted to the side or collapsed entirely. So we know that we have a lot of those buildings right here in San Francisco. In fact, CAPS estimates that we've got 2,800 of those buildings. What Prop A does is it provides $46 million worth of financing to retrofit soft-story buildings that house low-income San Franciscans. These are our most vulnerable members of our population. So what Prop A will do will be to allow us to retrofit those buildings so that the collapse rate goes from between 11 and 33%, which is where it is right now, to between 1 and 3%. That means that we will not end up like New Orleans after Katrina.
And what are the costs and/or benefits to San Francisco voters if this measure were to pass?
Well, this is an extremely modest bond. It's a general obligation bond, $46 million. So the cost per $500,000 of assessed value is $7.94. But the most important thing to remember is that there's a big cost to doing nothing. Because if these buildings fall down, not only do we have to rebuild them at an expense to all of us and to our society, but also they're a major fire risk. When buildings collapse and their gas lines break, they could cause a big fire, which is why the fire persons are very concerned about this measure as well and want to see it passed.
Thank you, Sarah. I hope this has been informative for you. Please visit the League of Women Voters website, www.sfvotes.org, for all voting information. And don't forget to vote on November 2nd.